Good day, everyone, and welcome to Tag 4, Day 2. My name is J.D. Bolton. It is my privilege to be your MC today on behalf of Tag 4 and the Classic Planning Institute. We look forward to sharing an exciting day together over this virtual platform, which has actually been worked out really well yesterday as well. So we're quite excited about that. I'm a master city planner, urban designer, and development management consultant. I'm also a professor here at the Classic Planning Institute and the studio lead at the Classic Planning Studio. And for those of you who don't know, the Classic Planning Studio it is kind of the consulting arm to the Institute and specializes in the highest levels of creativity in community design and planning. We engage in urban biometrics and neuroscience, and also work with communities to meet their futures through the generation of 100-year plans. Today's a full day. We've got some great panelists and coordinators here, and to give you a quick overview, Mr. Michael Diamant will be giving us a report from the field. Following that will be Mr. Flavio Diaz-Miron Rodriguez. His session is called Learning in the Storm, and we'll focus on student work and education. Then we have two really exciting breakout sessions. One by Professor Aaron Carmel, hosting the Futures panel called Meeting the Future, which is going to be really exciting. And also the second one being by Mr. Michael Mahaffey, will host a discussion on city and beauty. Followed by that, we will have Professor Julio Cesar Perez Hernandez give us an overview on education and pedagogy. And then at the end will be the counter proposal session, and that'll include myself. And last but not least, the private screening of Built Beautiful presented by Mr. Don Ruggles. That's going to be really exciting too. This will be a kind of a premiere. So just a reminder for everyone, the Tag 4 event is one of open-mindedness and quality of discourse. Participants are encouraged to debate each other's ideas from positions of mutual respect and good manners. So by joining a session or online thread, you do agree to avoid ad hominem statements regarding individuals present or absent and sectarian, religious, partisan, political, or aesthetic ideologies for their own sake. In other words, we all agree that the objective here at Tag 4 is to rise above and for the good of all to promote excellence in traditional design, and that is what we want to keep our dialogue focused on. And as Mr. Webb so eloquently said yesterday, cancel culture is not our culture. We are the culture, the cancel culture, or we are the culture, I should say. Please put, as you move forward in your sessions, I've been asked to just make this as a little bit of just from yesterday, is if you could put your questions in the chat line so that we can, the session coordinators can read those then after. And if you haven't already done so, please update to the latest version of Zoom. And at the end of the day, after the movie today, there's going to be a happy hour, so to speak, in the Four Seasons rooms. And those who need assistance into the room, please notify through the chat window if you want to, if you're not moved within a minute. Please repeat requests every minute until you are moved. And we have some technical people standing by that will help you do that, should that be a problem. And our apologies yesterday for accidentally knocking off the Four Seasons room. A few people got knocked off there accidentally. We'll make sure that doesn't happen today. Okay, so moving on to the introduction for the next session is, I now introduce to you Mr. Michael Diamant. He is the founder of New Traditional Architecture and the Atlas of New Traditional Architecture. He is also the co-founder of the Swedish Traditional Architecture lobbying group called, get this, Arkkitehtuurikapina. I don't know. I hope that's right. Since switching to English, which is a great after reading that word, his social media platforms have generated interest from as far away as Brazil and the Czech Republic to realize that even they can also build new traditional architecture as well. In 2020, and I was quite fascinated to see this, he launched the Google Maps layer called the Atlas of New Traditional Architecture, both for amusement and as a tool for research to identify new traditional architecture projects. I know that later on I'm going to have to go and find that. Anyways, so without further ado, he will now give us the report from the field. So over to you, Mr. Diamant.
So thank you very much for that introduction. Let's see, I will start sharing my screen. So, perfect. First of all, I would like to thank you for the invitation to speak at TAG. It's very flattering, and I'm very grateful for Dr. Niburas for the possibility to speak at TAG. I would also like to thank, all the people that help me daily with their expertise and their work to promote new traditional architecture. And some of them you will hear also, like Bertrand Bartel from Germany. You have Jorge de Azevedo from Brazil that helped me a lot. You have Julia Zadrosnaya that helped me a lot. She's from Russia. Tiago Henriquez from Portugal. Goran Zurich from Croatia. Alexandra Marinkovic from Serbia, and many more. I'm really grateful to you all. You help me a lot and you promote new traditional architecture. My presentation then will be about the 3 sites that I manage, with help, of course, then. And those are New Traditional Architecture on Facebook, New Traditional Architecture and Urbanism, the blog page, and the Google Maps layer, as you mentioned, the Atlas of New Traditional Architecture. And I will just explain to you all, how they came to be, how they operate, and what impact they have had, so far at least. So generally, it began with new traditional architecture. It was found already in 2013. It was also founded in Swedish, that is my native language. I can enjoy you with how it sounds in Swedish. Nyproduktion I klassisk tradition. And the objective was very, very simple, to show a Swedish audience that you can build traditional architecture today. And by doing this, I wanted to make people question, because modernism has such a grip in Sweden on architecture. And I also want to create engagement for new traditional architecture. And the execution then is, according to the well-known proverb, a picture is worth 1,000 words. So instead of talking, we should build new traditional architecture. I wanted to show, real examples, photos of here is a new building. And I hope that would inspire a bit more also. The question of ideology comes up, almost immediately. So it was important for me to have a strategy, when I post these new projects, what type of projects, where should these projects come from? And this is important because even though a Swedish audience loves and prefers more Swedish projects, it doesn't change the cultural discourse about what we are allowed to build in Sweden. For that, you need projects from other places, actually. And in the case of Sweden, we have 2 places, especially in the world, that Swedes admire very much. And maybe some of you will laugh now, but that is Berlin and New York. So everything that happens in these 2 cities, Swedes admire, and the Swedish chattering class, these places have a certain brand and identity. That's what the Swedish chattering classes enjoy very much. And you can't, accuse Berlin or New York for being backward places or authoritarian places. So by showing examples from these 2 places, I hope to speed up, the whole debate, what can we build in our time? And if these very cool places, progressive cities, if they build classicals, then we should be able to do it in Sweden. Even, on the contrary, if these cities build, we must build new classical, not to be backwards. And this was an initial, a very effective strategy, and also something I recommend for everyone, doing beginning with the advocacy for new traditional architecture. And that is to show, projects from places that your country admire very much. That will speed up the whole debate, if we are allowed. If they do it and we look up to them, then we should be able to be allowed to do it as well. Yes, and then we have this Arkkitehtuurikapina. basically after a year, in 2014, after a year that I had started New Traditional Architecture, I was contacted by a member that wanted to create some kind of complementary group. And the goal would be the same, to create public engagement for New Traditional Architecture, but the post would be a little different, a little more internet savvy, with less discussion and more effectiveness. And it has worked amazingly. It's in 6 short years that Architecture Uprising or Arkkitehtuurikapina has existed in Sweden. It has completely altered the debate in Sweden. And it has also succeeded in bringing people that never bothered about architecture to be interested and engaged in the architecture debate. One thing also important to point out is that these 2 groups, New Traditional Architecture and Architecture Rebellion, they do not compete with each other, they complement each other. They have the same goal, but a very, very different tone and presentation of their different projects. Then again, as you mentioned in the introduction of me, the language switched to English in 2018. And while I would have preferred to continue writing in Swedish as it is my native tongue, it makes it much easier, with exchange and discovery, for a bigger audience if you switch the language to English. And like with the Swedish Arkkitehtuurikapina, I also hope that, posts in New Traditional could then spread to local language forums, promoting more or less the identical discussion, in a multitude of languages, what we are allowed to build in our time. The post then in the group, they are both from members. This is very important to have like a group engagement, but they also, a lot of posts are from us that are admins. And this is important. We enjoy it, but also it is to foster like a higher post standard. And a popular way for advocacy is to post, to create like this before and after photo, showing, the immense improvement that traditional architecture can have on a streetscape. And the selection then of posts that we post in this group, it's not only the best projects, but we're trying to give a representation of what is happening, in many different countries. And this is also very important, because it makes it easier to share relevant posts than in local language groups. All older posts that has been posted in New Traditional Architecture are then put in the group albums, and they are sorted after country. So what you have here is basically, you can see national trends. You can click on any of these and you will get a lot of older posts from countries like Germany, Brazil, Czech Republic, the US. And you can see, with quite an ease, what is happening in all these different countries. Additionally to the Facebook group, I created this link list, or more or less it's a blog page, but the main function of this blog page is to have a link list of traditional firms in different countries. And it's also, it's a resource, it's a tool, it's very convenient. Instead of you, going through the hassle of searching in a language you don't speak for transforms in a specific country, it has all been provided here for your convenience and discovery. And added to this link list for each country, you can also find, notable craftsmen and local organizations that promote new traditional architecture. And as with the Facebook group, it's all to ease discovery and exchange over the language barriers. I could actually show it for you if I can see here. So you can see what it looks like. So basically, you have a link list here of all different countries, and you can click them.
Mr. Diamant, is there any way you can you can take that little B&O Bang & Olufsen thing off the front of the screen. It's showing. Thank you.
So basically you have a link list.
Still there.
Yeah, of a lot of countries. So everything has been, you know, served for you. You don't need to do all the research. I've done all the research for you. So you can find, you know, traditional firms in different countries. Very, very convenient. So if we continue presentation then. Oh, and finally the atlas. I will also show it live how it works. It's technically a Google Maps layer. And I should actually try to show it for you so you can see how it works. It's a Google Maps layer, and each dot here indicates the exact location of a project. Also very, very convenient here. And when you click on one of these dots, if we zoom in here on the Paris area, you will get information. Usually, this is a reconstruction, but you will get information, what type of project it is. You will get, often now this is an unfinished project, but you will get, you know, a photo of the project, what it will look like. And you will also get a link to the architect that provides this project. And as with, you know, it can be amusing, just, you know, traveling around the world and, you know, discovering different trad firms. You can go to exotic locations. How about, you know, North Macedonia? And you can find, you know, what's going on there. It's also, you know, it can be used for research or, you know, either, you know, I was thinking more because traditional architecture, you can often find that it clusters. So if you look at the Paris region, it's not, you know, an even spread. It's basically you have different clusters of traditional architecture being built. And then if you do additional study, you could find out, you know, why is there a cluster here? You know, what are the economic, political factors that create this cluster? Because a cluster indicates that there are favorable conditions. It could be, you know, that there's just a lot of traditional architects that live here. That is also a possibility. But at least, you know, with the map, you can identify these clusters, both nationally, which cities where you can find new traditional architecture, and in a specific city, you know, which areas can you find new traditional architecture. See, return to the presentation again. And an important subject is what impact all these sites have had. And as mentioned in this Facebook group now, because it's in English, it serves as a hub from where posts are spreading to much larger local language forums. New Traditional Architecture has around 20,000 members, and it's quite small on Facebook. You have local architecture groups in local languages that have maybe 50,000 members. But from this page, you can spread all this to all the different local language groups. So you have this, when you spread it to these groups, you get the identical discussion, you know, if we are allowed to build classical today. And it's basically recreated a million times. It's exactly the same arguments that are used against classical architecture all over the world, and the arguments for are also the same. This have had an impact because those people that are opposed to new traditional architecture are almost always architects. But the general public, when they see new traditional projects, they like it very much. And they do not like to be called, you know, that they are fascist or backward or anything for liking traditional architecture. And by having this vocal discussion, a lot of people that may be more socially sensitive, they also get, you know, it's okay to like new traditional architecture. Because what modernists have succeeded with a lot is stigmatizing that you are not allowed to like new traditional architecture. Equally important, and this is something that Arkkitehtuurikapina worked a lot with, is that to teach people to linguistically differ between modern architecture and modernist architecture. Then also with this group, you have all the different kind of exchanges that take place. And a recent one that I show you here in my presentation is a project post that I did about a new project in northern Stockholm, or it was a project suggestion. It was done by traditional architects Erik Norin and Else Wiklund. And this post was later spotted by a member. And the suggestion then ended up in a planning white paper of the UK think tank policy exchange. And these kinds of exchanges happen a lot. Also, you had people finding each other through this group, people that live in the same country. So what you had now in 2020 is that you have 2 new professionals groups have been created. One of them is a Polish group for students and professionals, and the other one is a group that covers the former Yugoslavia. And from this former Yugoslav group, an architecture rebellion, a Croatian architecture rebellion has been created. So it really, it serves as a hub and it spreads news all over the world, really. Then basically, what will the future hold? Well, more of the same, I would say. New traditional architecture as a concept to build is relatively unknown. So it has been a struggle, to get as far as we have gotten, because people don't spontaneously find this group on Facebook. But now when we're getting so large, Facebook's algorithms start to recommend it. So you will have faster growth just by Facebook recommending the group. And this in turn, will increase the interest and make more people aware that you can build traditional today and that it's ideologically acceptable to build new traditional architecture today. And then when this group is big enough, I would actually like to retire from it and create a new group that focus on classical planning, because this is something that I feel is equally important. Classical architecture or traditional architecture has come quite along. Traditional planning, maybe less so, at least in public awareness. There's not so much awareness that you can do traditional planning today. And that's what I would like to do in the future. And we will see what happens with that. That was all, and thank you very much for listening.
Just turn off your screen share.
Yes.
And if you want to introduce your next speaker, Ms. Uotila.
Yes, the next speaker now will be, actually, I think it will be Bertram Bartel, and he will present the situation in Germany, what is happening in Germany now in terms of new traditional architecture.
I will leave the stage to Marjo for now and Nicholas, and then I'll go after.
Okay. So then it will be Marjo then. Marjo will present, she is the chair of INTBAU Finland, and she also runs the equivalent to the Swedish Architecture Rebellion, but she does it in Finnish. And she will present the situation, what it is in Finland, also what are the fallacies that exist in the civil discourse, why you can't build traditional architecture today, the arguments against, and what counter arguments that she has brought. So over to you, Marjo.
Thank you very much. Can somebody show like this if my slides are visible and if my voice is audible? Okay, thank you. Well, thank you so much for the introduction, and thank you so much for inviting me. I think Dr. Nirburas and also Robert Adam are responsible for invitation, and I'm really grateful to be here and to discuss a little bit of the bottom-up approach to civic engagement, and also how to free ourselves from some of the common fallacies that we still hear. I guess many of the fallacies that I'll discuss are familiar to many of you as well. Like it was said, I'm the founder and chair of INTBAU Finland. I'm also the founder of the sibling group of the Swedish architectural uprising or uproar, and that's called Arkkitehtuurikapina in Finnish, if you want. And I'm also the board member of the association, the Swedish association Arkkitehtuurikapina Uproar, which is based on the Facebook group, but since then also become an official association. I'd like to start with somewhat with my background, which happened actually quite exactly 6 years ago, when I came across Michael Diamant, that you just heard of, and the founder of Arkkitehtuurikapina Uproar, the other Swedish group. And I came across these groups. I met these guys. I joined their groups. I liked every single post that there was. And I was just wondering, why haven't I heard this in Finland before? I've lived all my life hearing the fallacies. And now these guys are linking me to worlds and projects that I was told were not possible at all, ever again. So this was a moment of personal enlightenment when I recognized that I had all my life I had heard these fallacies, and now I realized that they were just lies. And I was so frustrated that I thought, well, somebody must do something, and maybe this is a common case that is familiar to you as well. When you look for somebody who should do something, and then you look at the mirror, and there it is. So that's what happened to me. I started to do something about it, and as I'm not an architect, I had to find other paths, other hats. And I've tried to find as many hats as I can possibly have to change the culture and to counter the fallacies that are still with us. So I needed to understand what the phenomenon was. Why is it possible for in other countries to build beautiful, new, classically inspired traditional buildings, and it's not possible in Finland? So my background is in research and in forming international networks, not in the architectural sphere, but in other, like in research and innovation and technology and so on. So it was quite natural for me to try to find research or international networks. And that's how I came across, for instance, INTBAU, and a lot of architects, researchers, historians, other professional people in other countries who were doing amazing things. And I started to post about these in Finland, also partly in Finnish, because the most of the audience would be Finnish. And then when I founded the social media group, Arkkitehtuurikapina Uproar in Finland, I realized that there's a huge need to have and offer peer therapy to other Finnish people who have also believed in the fallacies and now start to hear different truths. So it was really a great need for this. But also there is need to spread information in any channel, any possible channel. So I started to write blogs for different media. For instance, one of my blogs is for the Real Estate Magazine of Finland, which is really a influential professional magazine read by many people who have a say in how things are in the Finnish market. But also many of the things that are governing how the built industry looks like eventually are based on legislation and different policies on national level. And if you want to change that or have an impact on those, you have to go into politics, you have to work with politicians. And I would definitely say that this is a case where it's not a mandate or the ownership of this matter is not in a particular political party or ideology, but we need everybody, and that's what's happening in Finland. Also, in terms of civic engagement, we have a different situation right now. If we compare it, let's say, what was possible 20 years ago or so. In pre-social media era, we had active people, they were individuals, and they might have been writing, also in Finland, isolated articles, and also maybe some research was done, but they were isolated. They didn't form a proper group. And also architectural profession used to be in ivory towers, I would say. But now in the social media era that we are dealing with, we have individual persons have been empowered. Every one of us has access to social media platforms. We are free to join dedicated groups with common interests and share content. And also we can have an impact in a second worldwide if we are active. So we have this snowball effect, which we didn't have before social media. And also the architectural profession has been now challenged by the growing demands to engage citizens and understand human behavior. So I would say that I have this could be also called like a mission statement, that I feel that especially in historic neighborhoods, the new buildings should strive for adding beauty and harmony instead of ugliness and contrast. However, what is happening, we are still told common, unquestioned truths that justify the ugliness of our time. So I believe we have to challenge them. And I think that all of the fallacies that I'm going to list to you right now, it's not an exhaustive list. There are several more, and you can let me know afterwards the ones that I've left out from today's PowerPoint slides. But I think that they are quite ridiculous. But the most ridiculous thing is that I hear these fallacies as presented to me as truths at least once a week from by normal, clever people. So they are really, really deeply rooted to our discussions. And this is a very common one. Beauty is too expensive. So I've heard, I don't know how many times I've heard this, that of course everybody would want to build more beautiful buildings, but we can't because it's so expensive. And I've been trying to to understand how this is. And we actually have quite a recent research made in Sweden by the Royal Institute of Technology, architectural department, I think even, and which has stated that it's not more expensive to build beautiful than ugly. And it's a crazy thing that you have to research such an idiotic thing, but anyway, here we are. And also we have to ask, are all new ugly buildings really cheap? And I say they are not, they are definitely not. Well then, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. This is also a common knowledge that this is how it is. But instead, it seems that
Marjo,
yes,
I'm sorry to interrupt you. But
I'm out of time.
You're out of time. We need time for the next presenter in our session. But you can wrap it up.
I'm almost in my final slide. I'm
Good.
almost in my final slide. No problem. So anyone in Helsinki that you ask what is a beautiful street will come up with this one in this building. So no problem with that. Also, buildings should not copy past, but all the new buildings are copying past, and they are copying anything that goes. So this is a fallacy as well. Here are two buildings. One is from Helsinki, one is from Beirut. One was built in the 70s, one was built quite recently. I forgot which was which, but still we hear that buildings should reflect their own time. I just don't know which one is which. So this is a fallacy. Also, adding contrast would be adding chaos. So why is it a good thing? Also, this is what we get typically. I want to end with this. So we are still doing bad damage to our historic districts. So we have especially, well, this is the case, one of the many cases in Finnish capital Helsinki, where right next to a beautiful...
We need to move on to the, we need to move on to the next session.
Okay.
To the next
Very
speaker,
good.
I should say. Thank you.
Oh, that's good. Thank you. And this is my last slide. So I invite you to join the group. Also, I invite you to write to my email, marjo.uotila@iki.fi, if you have any ideas to collaborate. So let's hear the next speakers as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marjo. And the next speaker will be Nicholas Boyce-Smith from Create Streets, that will tell about more about his very important engagements. Over to you, Nicholas.
Thank you very much, Michael. I'm just trying to share my screen, but I'm not able to. So perhaps if that could be permitted. There we go. Thank you. So let's just do that. There we go. Can you all see that? There we go. Can you see that? Oh, I'm in the wrong place. Bear with me. I apologize. I seem to be on slightly slow. There we go. Has that come up? Okay. Yes, I'm assuming that's a yes. So I'm going to ask one question. Where then would you wish to live? And I'd like to tell you a quick story about when Create Streets was young, when we first set up about 7 years ago. We were asked to look at a study on how community engagement had been run for an estate regeneration. The process had been what you might call responsive consultation. This is what we're proposing, what do you think? And lots of hard to pin down questions, rather than true engagement of what do you like? Where would you wish to live? What's your favorite part of this town? In fact, when we asked that question, the tenant's friend, paid for in fact by the landlord, he looked round at me in surprise and said, "Why do you ask that?" Which seemed rather curious. And the reason we asked was that the answer we got from the tenants was a stunningly emphatic preference for traditional streets with small private gardens. Here's a direct quote, which you can see in front of you. "Terraced houses, just like in the old days. The old terrace houses were fabulous. We had little yards, we'd talk over the back fences, you could pop over the road, such a strong community." The architect had previously said that maximizing open space and river views had driven the entire design. And when we asked the tenants in front of you, would you have traded off some of that open space for what you just described? The answer, and again, this is a direct quote, was an emphatic yes, yes, yes. And sadly, that is not a unique tale. It is a tale that could be repeated 100, 1,000, 1,000,000 times. So for my first key message from Create Streets, a social enterprise based in London, to anyone involved in traditional architecture, or indeed architecture full stop, or urbanism or traditional urbanism, is ask real questions, not fake ones. Create Streets is a London-based social enterprise. You can all read. I'm not going to read this at you. We've got very limited time. We do three key things. We do research into what people like and the associations between the built environment, by which I mean all of urbanism as well as architecture, and well-being, value, prosperity, what people pay for, where they know more of their neighbours. Some of that research is secondary. We collate academic research and translate it into language that people understand, and some of their own primary research. We then work with a now rapidly growing range of neighbourhood and community groups, also councils and landowners, to put it into practice. And we're taking a very active role in debate on planning policy in the UK and beyond. And I would certainly echo very strongly what Marjo said. You've got to work with the politics and with the power, otherwise you're just talking into the internet. So research, I'm going to go through these incredibly fast, I'm afraid, and I'm conscious of time. We love big data. Data is our friend. We looked at, we used an algorithm based on 1.5 million ratings on over 200,000 images, took lots of places in London and worked out the links between the places people preferred and some of the correlations in the GIS data. You can see them here. This is probably not telling you anything surprising. Here are some of the least popular places in London, and here are some of the most popular places in London. Spot anything? Well enclosed, well articulated, often a bit of greenery, though not necessarily. The themes that humans like, this is to Marjo's point, are consistent. They rhyme over time and culture. They vary, they have variety, but they have similar basics. Here's a study we did of values of property sales in London. The traditional urbanism premium, the heritage premium, if you like, is 4 to 7 times greater than the new build premium. Here's an excellent study done in Holland of some of the urban extensions. Places that have, if you like, a more vernacular look and feel have a consistent and statistically robust price premium. So we're doing something wrong. And this is my second key message to everyone on this call. The big data is on your side. Know the data, use the data, love the data. It goes further. Traditional block patterns are associated with lower crime. Mixed use areas are associated with cleaner air and more walking. Lowly traffic streets are associated with knowing more of your neighbours. This is a famous study by Brian Appleyard from 1977 that most of you probably know. It's just been replicated in Bristol in the UK a few years ago. Here's perhaps a more controversial one. Steps up to the front door are associated with better long-term physical health in older people, and facades that don't look like the facade on the right, but look more like the facade on the left, are actually associated with people spontaneously helping spuriously lost tourists more frequently. 5 times as many people offered to help people lost in front of the building on the left to the building on the right. Colour is consistently associated with people feeling good. Why is it that photographs of streets like this in every city are the most photographed? Symmetry or near symmetry is associated with people preferring it very consistently in every study I've ever read, and I've read a couple of dozen. One-way streets are associated with faster traffic and more crime and lower values, and places that people prefer, again in some of the big data analysis, are associated with higher levels of mental well-being, higher levels of place preference. Again, another study in the UK found that it was actually a stronger correlation than the amount of greenery. I slightly question that. It almost doesn't matter if it's first or second. It's in there, it matters. So what we pull that together in our work at Create Streets is you can pull together the themes that most people like. Here they are. Gentle density, greenery little and often, structured bench and statues, beauty really matters. You can predict what people will like. I wouldn't say it's quite traditional architecture, but it's very close. It's got the patterns of. We're not a traditional architecture group. We're a group for what people like and where they're prosperous. Mixed use, use of edges, walkability, and human scale enclosure. That is a reasonably, obviously a little bit simplifying summary of the data. So that's my third key messages to all of you, indeed to anyone. Argue for popular places which are good for you. Those vary over time, but they are very consistent. Next key message, co-design. Trust the people, work with the people. Here's this is a workshop we ran in a social tenants group in West London. I won't go through all the detail. We looked at affordability, we looked at preferences, we looked at sustainability. Here is both a member of the group and an architect presenting where we got back to, we had various tables, sketches from the day, and then the worked up design by Francis Terry coming out of that community-led work. Work with the people. Trust them and work from day one. Don't impose on them, don't impose style, allow people to choose what they like, and you'll get to something that it may be traditional, it may be close to traditional, it may be new modern vernacular, but it will have the same key elements. Now, here's the dangerous bit, because I'm going to try and show a video. Let's see if this works. And you can do this online. Now, is this going to work? I'm a bit nervous. Let's see if this is working. No, the video is not working. I'm going to jump over. Oh, no. Hang on. Let's see if you can hear this. Put your thumbs up, Michael, if you can hear this in 2 seconds. Can you hear that?
Nicholas, this is the technical producer. What I'll have you do is please unshare your screen. When you click on share screen again, right before you choose to share your desktop, there'll be a checkbox in the bottom left corner.
I'm being told that's not working. So I suspect that's probably, we're trying to push our luck too far. So I suspect let's not try and do that. I think it's going to take too long to get that working. So I'm sorry about that. I was pushing my luck there. Let me just go back to where we are. We're nearly finished, I promise. So I'm not going to show you the video of an online workshop, but you'll just have to trust me. Oh no, I'm going to try and do it now. Hang on. I apologize. I was pushing my luck there. Okay, now what's going on here? No, I don't want to show that because it's just going to make a mess. Okay, let's try and do that again. No, I can't now get off the screen. Is that? Can anyone hear that? Okay, sorry, disaster here. Let me come back. I'm very sorry. I'm not able now to get back to the screen I want to get to. It keeps going to the video. Can you see? Can you now go back to the? Is that back to the PowerPoint? Oh, Jesus. There, has that gone back to the PowerPoint? Michael, can you do a thumb up if that's working? Just because I can see you on my screen. Okay.
Yes, it's working.
What's going on here? Is that, that's working? I'm sorry, I'm very sorry about that, everyone. I was trying to do a video. I won't try and do that again. So basically what I was trying to say with the video, which we shall now ignore and pretend that last 2 minutes never happened, is that you can actually run sessions with people online as well. We're finding it's working, and we're pulling forward quite an insensitive design next to a Hawksmoor listed church. Also, I think the key point is engage wide as well as engage deep. We now have an online tool which we're using to garner hundreds, in some cases thousands of responses to places that people like or don't like in a town or city. Guess what? They don't like this, and they'd like a town like a street like this to be reimagined. Here's nearly 1,000 responses we got over 4 days. So the same technology that Michael was using about can actually be used on the ground to make better places, and we're starting to do that. So that's my key message, and I'm nearly done. Engage both wide and deep. My last message is it's not the words, it's the pictures. I think in a way Michael and Mario in a way ran ahead of this. People say they care about design, and function does not lead to the same form. Here are two things performing the same function, but somehow they seem to be rather different impact on the human spirit. One is touching the sublime, the other is scuttling for the coal bunker. The same place can be improved by better building, so why don't we do it? This, as you probably all know, certainly those of you in the States, is on the same block as this. Somehow they have a different impact on human well-being. As we know, this is a famous comparison that Anne Sussman makes. You find postcards of one, you find a few of the other. And you can then pull this through into polling. This is polling we did of preferred house types in the UK a few years ago, which led to an almost doubling of support for new housing. Here's some polling we did, showed a completely different preference. So the two buildings on the two streets on the top were preferred by over 80% of people. But when we controlled for profession, we found that the two buildings on the bottom were preferred by more designers and architects than the ones on the top. So it's what we call the design disconnect. And there are also studies from Canada, another two from the UK, and one from, I forget where in South America, that find the same response. Here's polling we did with Mori. Guess what? People massively and consistently prefer places that are more textured and tenured, such as on the left, or such as on the top here, such as on the bottom here. You've got to get the evidence of what people like and use it in public debate. And that's now increasingly easy to do. Thanks to the marvels of CGI, thanks to the marvels of technology, you can compare this house to that house, and they're the same inside. The windows are slightly different. Which would you prefer? Which would you rather see built in your area? That's obviously a UK example, may not be right for all of you, but I can tell you what the polling consistently says, or indeed that one. Just to finish, 2 more minutes. The words that architects and planners and designers use are often misleading. Calling something a garden doesn't make it a garden. Calling something a square doesn't make it a square. Calling something a village doesn't in fact make it a village, and certainly calling something human scale doesn't make it human scale. This is described as human scale on the website of the architect. It is Brobdingnagian in its scale, it is not humane. And finally on this one, calling something Canaletto does not make it the Canal Grande. It is the pictures, it is not the words. And then a final thought, just to pick up on Mario's point, you've got to get into the politics, you've got to understand where influence lies. We've been very involved with government reports, and making the case for gentle density, a whole series of quite detailed policy suggestions. I'm sorry, I've just realized that's going to be slow. Let's go through that. And there was a an important report chaired by Roger Scruton and myself, the late Roger Scruton, which has actually led to, I think, quite an important series of government changes and indeed to the new National Model Design Code in England. You can see the cover here. I suspect all of you won't quite like it because it's not about traditional architecture, but it is about a process of allowing communities to set what they like more clearly and far more visually and far more numerically. So I leave you with that thought. Thank you very much indeed.
All right. Beg your pardon, Michael. I'm going to interrupt very briefly, just to say we have run a bit over time, and so we'll not be hearing from Mr. Bertram today. But tomorrow we are going to add a session to hear from INTBAU Germany with Mr. Bertram Barthel taking the lead on that. So instead of just a few minutes, we're going to give him a complete session with some of his colleagues. I'll turn this now back over to Mr. Diamant to wrap up.
Thank you very much. As Patrick Webb explained, Bertram Barthel will present the situation in Germany tomorrow. Now I wonder if we have time for it, but it should be open now for questions to us about our engagement. If you have, do we have time for questions?
We have.
The point is we don't.
We don't really know.
Then you can write questions directly to us in the chat and we can answer. Thank you very much for allowing us to present our engagement.